The British monarchy is in a strange position of still being officially buttressed by a Christian faith, that is, the faith of the Church of England in particular, which I find quite strange given that the majority of the United Kingdom have now thrown off that religion, unlike the United States, that the UK is kind of the polar opposite in that it is technically a religious state, but in practice very secular, unlike the United States, which is technically secular, but in practice very religion oriented. Do
I
you
think one of the healthiest things for the Christian church in our country has been the separation of church and state, that we do not have a state church. And what that means is that the church, in order to survive, must do so on its own strength without being propped up by the government. And it seems like across Europe, wherever you have a state church, it has suffered seriously and is in a state of decline. Whereas this separation of church and state that we have in the United States has been very, very bracing for the religious vitality of our nation.
Well, yeah, one of the things that people don't realize is that the separation of church and state is as much supposed to serve the church as it is supposed to serve the state. The origin of Thomas Jefferson's wall of separation
Yes.
was in a letter wishing to protect the Danbury Baptists, I believe, from by the government. And so it actually works the other way around to what a lot of people think it is. Now we hear talk of the separation of church and state as don't allow religion to meddle in government affairs, but it has its origins in an equal and opposite force, not allowing government to interfere in religious affairs too.
Yes, that's absolutely right. We've got in this country both what's called the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. And this guarantees not only that religion doesn't interfere in the government, but that the government cannot infringe upon the free exercise of religion in this country. And that is a precious right which is often under duress and needs to be defended, but is extremely important. I think you're quite right about that.
Yeah, but this is something that's been eroded potentially in more recent years. And by more recent years, I mean the recent history of the United States since the 20th century. The printing of "In God We Trust" onto the currency seems a little bit strange for a secular a nation whose original
Yeah.
motto was "E pluribus unum." Putting reference to God in the Pledge of Allegiance, things like this. I
Yeah.
wonder, as a Christian yourself, who will doubtless celebrate the values that are being instilled into these institutions, are you nonetheless hesitant to see them officially embossed in this way in what should otherwise be a
Well, that's a
secular
very
nation?
interesting question because I must admit to feeling a degree of discomfort about those very things because the way in which they're justified is that this kind of civil religion is so general and so innocuous that it becomes virtually meaningless and therefore is not intended to establish religious faith. And to me, securing that kind of expression at the expense of meaninglessness and inconsequentialness is a high price to pay. So I do feel somewhat uncomfortable about that. I would rather have these phrases be imbued with deep, significant meaning and excluded than included at the price of triviality.